So I'm going to show you how to make a mini cake, just one cake for yourself. You'll go to find the recipe, you want to go to the kitchen measurement folder, open it up, and it says it's the mug cake recipe. Now you have two choices, then you can make a chocolate one or a vanilla one. I'll show you what the vanilla one looks like in a minute. I'm going to make the chocolate one for you. And before you get started, you want to notice that we're going to get our equipment ready. So first of all, you need to find something to make it in. Now it says it's a mug cake. You'll notice I'm making it in a regular bowl. We make them in bowls at school too. The mugs we have at school are pretty small and this won't fit in it. So you need a pretty big mug to do this at home, or you can just do a bowl. Make sure the bowl is microwave safe because this is going to go in the microwave. So you need your bowl. You're going to need your measuring spoons. You see I've got mine spread out because I've got it all ready to go here. You're going to need a whisk. You're going to need a leveler, and you're going to need a liquid measuring cup. So ingredients that you're going to need. First thing, you're going to need flour. You're going to need cocoa powder, because that's the next thing you check. First of all, do you have the equipment when you start a recipe? And then you check and make sure that you've got the ingredients. We're going to use baking powder. Now please notice this is not baking soda. Baking soda is the stuff you most often see in the orange box. That's not what this is. This is baking soda and baking and cornstarch mixed together. It works differently in a recipe. So you need to have baking powder. We've got sugar. We're going to use salt. And we've got milk that's going to go in it. And lastly, we've got oil. And then as an option, if you want, I'll show you, you can add chocolate chips into it. So let's get started on this. You want to measure carefully. So the first thing you're going to do is put your dry ingredients into the bowl. We want to measure out 1/4 of a cup of flour. So if you'll recall, when we measure our flour, if you remember correctly, we take it and we measure by scooping in. You can see what I'm doing here. Okay, and then I'm going to level off back into the container. Okay, there's my 1/4 of a cup of flour. Then it calls for 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So the same thing, here's my cocoa powder. Again, this is not like a chocolate drink mix. This is unsweetened cocoa powder. So there's 1. Just like before, you level off. Get another one in there. Level it back into the container. There's my cocoa. Then it calls for 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. My baking powder can happens to have a leveler built in. If it didn't, I would need to get some sort of a straight edge, but this way I can just level it just like that. Mix that in. It calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. So I'll get my sugar. Oops, I am so sorry about that. And level that off as well. There's 1. And again, make sure I've got a full tablespoon there. 2 tablespoons of sugar. And my last dry ingredient is salt. I need 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I've gone ahead and put some in the bowl so it's easier to measure. Now, I was very proud of most of you guys. You realize a lot of you don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon. I do. And so I can just fill that up just like that and put it in there. So many of you don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon, and you realize that 1/8 is 1/2 of a 1/4 of a teaspoon. So you just fill that up halfway, just kind of eyeballed it, and that works as well if you don't happen to have that. All right, at this point, we need to stir our dry ingredients. I'm going to take my whisk. If you don't have a whisk, again, you can use a spoon. I'm going to mix it all together. And you don't want to see any streaks of the cocoa powder. And make sure it gets mixed all the way to the bottom. I'm going to put those back in. I'm going to get those lumps out with my whisk or your spoon that you're using. Okay, so there's my dry mixture. The next thing I want to put in is 1/4 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon of milk. I have a little tiny baby measuring cup that holds exactly 1/4 of a cup. I'm going to scoot my bowl back just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to fill that up. Remember, you have to get down at eye level and look and make sure that you've actually got 1/4 of a cup. And I do. So I'm going to pour that in. I also need 1 tablespoon of milk. You cannot leave that extra out. Notice that I never measure over my bowl, because if I over pour my milk or whatever I was using, it'll all go in. You want to fill it up to the very edge. There's my 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon. I also need my oil, and I need 2 tablespoons of oil, just plain old vegetable oil. And again, there is 1, and again, fill it all the way up to the edge. There's 2. Okay. Now, that's all the liquid ingredients. Now, this time you got to be really careful. I don't want to slosh this all over the place. So I'm going to start in there. I'm going to go at it gently. You guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to scrape the sides with the whisk. So my first job is just to get the wet and dry mixed together. If you start stirring it really fast, you're just going to have it all over your counter. And somebody at your house is not going to be very happy with it. So you can see I'm going very gently. I'm moving the bowl, and you can see I keep pulling up dry ingredients from the bottom. Stirring it gently. I don't want to see anything dry in there. Now I've got some stuck in here. I'm going to tap that off a little bit. Go back in. Now I'm going a little bit faster. I'm continuing to use my whisk. And if you don't have one, that's okay. Now the interesting thing about this, there's no egg in this. Yes, it's a cake. And no, there's no egg, but it works really well. I'm continuing to stir. You want to scrape. I can hear it scraping the bottom of my bowl. I want to check and make sure that I have no dry ingredients down there. And I don't. So there is my bowl. Now the last thing this calls for is chocolate chips. You do not have to put chocolate chips in. You could put sprinkles in. You could put white chocolate chips in, caramel chips, or nothing. So we're going to go ahead and put regular chocolate chips in. If you choose to do that, you just want to put in a tablespoon. So I'm going to grab a tablespoon here. Got my chocolate chips just sitting here. And I'm just going to take them and sprinkle them across the top. You can stir them in if you want. I'm choosing not to. So there's my tablespoon of chocolate chips. Now here's the cool thing. I'm going to step over and I'm going to put it in the microwave. I'm going to set it for 85 seconds. And while it's cooking, I'll show you the vanilla cake that I made earlier. So set your timer for 85 seconds. Now here's the vanilla cake that I made. It got a little crooked. That's okay. It's got pink and purple sprinkles on it. Pretty fun. You don't have to put sprinkles on it, but I mean, who doesn't want sprinkles in there? I suppose you could put chocolate chips in it. That wouldn't be my choice, but that's just me. But when you dig down in, you notice, look at that. You have cake. You see that? Look how pretty that is, and look how delicious that is. It's really yummy, warm. You can put whipped cream on it. What about icing? Most of the kids at school didn't think it needed icing. So it's going to be delicious. Let me taste it for you. Oh man, tasty, tasty. So you see how quickly these whip together? Keep in mind, a little bit of difference. The vanilla cake, obviously we don't put any cocoa in it because that makes it chocolate. So since you're leaving the cocoa out, your recipe, you'll notice, calls for an extra tablespoon of flour. Please don't leave that out. It will make a difference. It will be too soupy if you leave that out. We've got about 10 seconds left on our chocolate cake. I can't wait to show you what that looks like. But none of these ingredients really can be substituted. You can't leave out the milk. I suppose if you had a milk allergy, you could certainly use almond milk or rice milk or one of those. As far as other oils go, I think you could probably get away. If you use olive oil or something, it's going to change the flavor of it a little bit. It's going to be a little, you'll be able to taste the olive oil. There's my chocolate cake. Check this out. Ooh, yum. The gooey chocolate. Oh, that looks good. Okay. So that's what you guys are going to be making. I can't wait to see how it turns out. You can choose one or the other. and decide what you want to put in it as far as the extras, and I can't wait to see your work.